In the heart of Nairobi, Kenya, lived a man named Mike. He was a hard-working husband, a loving father, and a man who prided himself on being attentive to his family's needs. But lately, Mike had been worried. He noticed that his wife, Wanjiru, seemed to be struggling to hear him. She would often ask him to repeat himself, and sometimes, she wouldn't respond at all. Mike's concern grew with each passing day. He feared that Wanjiru might need a hearing aid, but he didn't want to upset her by confronting her directly. One morning, Mike decided to seek advice. He called their family doctor, Dr. Omondi, and explained his concerns. "Doctor, I think Wanjiru might be losing her hearing. She doesn't respond when I talk to her, and I'm worried she might need a hearing aid. But I don't want to hurt her feelings by bringing it up. What should I do?" Dr. Omondi, a wise and experienced man, listened carefully. After a moment of thought, he said, "Mike, before jumping to conclusions, let's try something. I want you to test her hearing without her suspecting anything. Here's what you'll do. Stand 40 feet away from her and ask her a question in your normal tone. If she doesn't respond, move closer to 30 feet and ask again. Keep reducing the distance until she answers. This way, we can gauge her hearing without alarming her." Mike agreed, feeling relieved that he had a plan. That evening, as Wanjiru was in the kitchen preparing dinner, Mike decided to put Dr. Omondi's theory to the test. He stood 40 feet away, near the living room, and called out, "Honey, what are we eating for dinner?" Silence. Mike moved closer, now 30 feet away, and asked again, "Honey, what are we eating for dinner?" Still, no response. He took a few more steps, now 20 feet away, and repeated, "Honey, what are we eating for dinner?" Nothing. Mike's heart sank. He moved even closer, now just 10 feet away, and asked once more, "Honey, what are we eating for dinner?" Still, Wanjiru didn't respond. Feeling a mix of frustration and concern, Mike walked right up to his wife and stood directly in front of her. He looked into her eyes and asked, "Honey, what are we eating for dinner?" Wanjiru turned to him, her face calm but her eyes sharp with irritation. She placed her hands on her hips and said, "For the 5th time, Mike, I said we are eating ugali with chicken." Mike froze. His eyes widened as the realization hit him like a thunderclap. It wasn't Wanjiru who had a hearing problem, it was him. He had been the one who couldn't hear her responses all along. Wanjiru's expression softened as she saw the shock on her husband's face. She reached out and gently touched his arm. "Mike, are you okay?" Mike took a deep breath, feeling a mix of embarrassment and relief. "Wanjiru, I thought you were the one who couldn't hear. I've been so worried. But it's me. I'm the one who needs help." Wanjiru smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "Well, now we know. And we'll handle it together, just like we always do." The next day, Mike visited Dr. Omondi, who confirmed that Mike had indeed been experiencing hearing loss. With the doctor's guidance, Mike got a hearing aid, and his world became clearer once again. But more importantly, Mike learned a valuable lesson that day. Sometimes, the problems we think belong to others are actually our own. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is not just worrying about someone else's well-being, but also being willing to look inward and address our own shortcomings. From that day forward, Mike and Wanjiru's bond grew even stronger. They laughed about the incident often, and Mike never hesitated to ask for clarification when he needed it. After all, love isn't just about hearing each other's words, it's about truly listening, even when the sound is faint. And in their home, the sound of understanding was always loud and clear. Mike's story reminds us that before we point fingers at others, we should take a moment to reflect on ourselves. After all, the greatest lessons often come from within. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.